now. So what does it mean politically for President Trump? Let's bring in Dina Badala, who's the host on Sirius XM. Denise Gitsham is a NewsNation political contributor, former Republican congressional candidate from California. We welcome both of you. What do you think? We know what the president is going to say about it. I'll put it up in a second again. But what do you make of this? Because I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna about the stock market. I've covered the market for years and years, and sometimes you get the biggest rallies in quote-unquote bear markets, really, really strong rallies coming back, and then next thing you know, you're down again. So that could happen. But this was good news today on a couple of different fronts. There's signs of maybe a little bit of thawing with China, okay? And the jobs report was strong. So what does it mean for the president, Denise?
Well, I think anytime you lower expectations for someone and then things turned out way better, which is what the Democrats have been doing with all their doom and gloom, they set themselves up for this, right? They set Trump up actually for success. Anything that fell short of disaster was going to be a win. This is something we all know in politics. What I think is so interesting is that when people, Americans, voted for Donald Trump, they voted for someone who was a disruptor, who was in stark contrast to what they'd had in office before, Beltway insiders, people who always did the same way. And they voted for someone who chose to take risks. They may not always like those risks, but at the end of the day, this president is going to be judged based on what results he delivers for the American people, and nobody cares more about those outcomes and his own popularity than Donald Trump.
Here's part of what he said. You're right, Dean, on social media. His Truth Social post reads is, just like I said, and we're only in a transition stage, just getting started. Consumers have been waiting for years to see prices come down. No inflation. Fed should lower its rate. We talked about it earlier. That last part, I don't understand that last part, why the Fed would be motivated to lower rates if the economy is actually holding up pretty strongly, or in a pretty good spot right now. But what would you say, Dean, about the rest of it, which is that it is in a pretty relatively good spot going into this next period? What does it mean politically?
Well, just look at his post just 2 days ago. He said this is the Biden stock market, right? So it is the Biden stock market. It's the Biden economy. He literally wrote that, right? Donald Trump. No exaggeration. It's the Biden stock market. So this is the Biden stock market. Let's hold Trump to his word. It's going great, isn't it? Look, the economy, we don't know where it's going. Even though I'm a Democrat, I'm not rooting for the economy to fail to hurt Trump politically. I don't want to see my fellow Americans suffer. I want the economy to be strong. The problem is, look at consumer confidence just this week earlier. It's the lowest since 2020, even lower when you look at future expectations about jobs and about inflation. There's a great deal of concern. People don't know where we're going. And so that's the problem. I don't think this solves it. A rally a couple of days in the market doesn't eliminate those concerns people have.
No, doesn't eliminate. And like I said, sometimes you get a big rally in a down market. Sure. And that's what bear market rally, that's where you get that name from. And something that are very, very sharp rallies. We get that. But one thing, just as on the other side, consumer confidence going down can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, Denise, where people say, oh, boy, everybody's worried. I'm not going to. The reverse can also be true. If you start to see, you turn your TV on today and say, oh, well, the market's up a lot. Oh, it's come back. My 401k's come back. Then the confidence builds on itself. But the next step is the important part, the next 6 weeks or so. To me, the president's got to get some deals done, whether it's China or whether it's someone else, right? He's got to put some deals on the table if you want to build on it.
Yeah, and thankfully, he can do that on his own, right? He doesn't need to build any political consensus to get jobs and, bilateral deals done with these countries that he says are flocking to America and trying to get something done. I really think that it's interesting that in spite of all the concern that people have with what his tariffs are going to do to our economy, Republicans still hold a 9%, this is according to a CNN poll yesterday, a 9% approval rating advantage over Democrats who are bellyaching about it all. So whatever you might think personally about what's going on, people seem to have confidence in Trump's record from his first term, and they have confidence that while it looks sketchy right now, if they just hold on, something's going to pan out. And I think that's what's bolstering a lot of those feelings.
Yeah, we saw the numbers. We did the poll the other day, like our numbers, like many other numbers. The president was losing support among independents, but his base was staying with him. And your larger point, Denise, is true. So Dean, the Democrats have, Democrats, especially in Congress, do have worse numbers. So what's the next move there? Because now there's going to be the big debate. But the Democrats are not really part of that, right, over the budget and everything else. Republicans have to get it done on their own. So what do the Democrats do, if anything?
They do. Could I just say one thing about the trade deal? I love that Donald Trump bragged that he has 200 trade deals already done. There's only 190 countries.
I know. Well, we've come to expect that kind of thing, right?
The same country.
Numbers.
That doesn't matter.
Detail.
Look, It's true. If Republicans stay in lockstep in the House, they will pass a budget that calls for probably about $800 billion in Medicaid cuts. 4 in 10 children in America get their health insurance from Medicaid. Millions of people in red states, constituents who are Republicans, get their benefits from seniors to kids from Medicaid. So if they're going to cut that, I hope they don't. For the tax cut, just do the tax cut for the wealthy, even though I don't support it. Don't gut a program for the most vulnerable Americans. But Republicans have to walk the plank. If they're going to do that, some of them are going to pay in the swing districts.
Yeah, it's the next big debate that's going to happen. In fact, we had, speaking of how the Democrats respond, the former Congressman from Michigan, Andy Levin, on last hour, and here's how he took that question on. Take a listen.
Yes, we need to be not just against Trump, but what are we for? And what we've got to be for is putting more money in working class Americans' pockets through great jobs, strong unions, strong minimum wages, increasing minimum wages, taking down health care costs.
So, yeah, I asked him, Denise, as a follow-up, I mean, you want to spend more money, Republicans want to cut, and he said, well, no, not exactly. But the point is, that is the larger point. Democrats want the government to do more in a period of time where Republicans are calling for big spending cuts. And that Medicaid debate is going to be interesting that Dean brings up within the party.
Yeah, well, Democrats are, at least this Democrat is partly right and partly wrong. He's right in that they really do need to figure out what they stand for as a party. When you've got 60% of the Democrats pushing for a more moderate position on the issues and only 39% pushing for more progressive positions, a lot of what he's talking about isn't going to resonate because people don't want a socialist country, and that's how they see the Democrats' proposals that have been forwarded. I didn't hear anything new in what he said just then about what message Democrats need to have. I think what Democrats need to do, and I say this as somebody who's a Republican consultant and hopes they never take any of my advice because I think it's a win for them if they do, I think what they need to do is get in touch with the reality that their party has abandoned, at least in image, the way that they present working class voters. They're out of touch, especially with their more internationalist perspectives, as a lot of people would say globalist. You know, there's a feeling that Democrats don't care about their own constituents, and they've abandoned the values and the cultural values too that working class voters care about.
All right, we have to run. We'll get back to you, Dean, next time you're on that. That's a bigger discussion. We keep having it, and we will continue to. Dean Al-Badallah, Denise Gitsham with us today. 25 past.